In today's video, we're going to talk about the wisdom of one of the best-selling financial education books in the world, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Stay tuned. If you've been in the financial education space for a while, you've very likely heard of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was among the first personal finance books I read, and I like to reread it yearly. It was written by Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lichter in 1997. It describes his relationship with his two quote-unquote dads. His rich dad is actually Robert's friend's father and a successful entrepreneur in Hawaii. Rich Dad has an 8th grade education, but has a strong understanding of business. Rich Dad owned several businesses and went on to become one of the richest men in Hawaii. Poor Dad is Robert Kiyosaki's biological father. Poor Dad was a professor with a PhD and multiple degrees. He was very well read, but struggled financially. Kiyosaki's Rich Dad and Poor Dad were fundamentally opposite. Kiyosaki's Poor Dad believed that people should work for money and study hard to get degrees in order to be hired by a big profitable company. Poor Dad believed your job brought security. Poor Dad believed one's wealth came from their family background. Basically, you have to be born into wealth. He was of the opinion that the best way to become financially stable, if not wealthy, is to read and learn from successful people. Kiyosaki's Rich Dad was very different. Rich Dad advised Kiyosaki to get a job at a young age so he can learn skills he needed to become an entrepreneur. He believed it was more profitable in the long run to work for experience rather than for money. Rich Dad believed wealth comes from experience-based learning and multiple income streams. He preached total financial self-reliance and was able to grow his wealth over time through owning businesses and investing. One great way you can show your support for the content I create here is by clicking the like button for the YouTube algorithm. I'd really appreciate it. The like button tells YouTube that you want to see this kind of information, and it helps to get the word out about the channel. Some people say that Rich Dad, Poor Dad is an allegorical story and argue that Rich Dad never existed. Others say that Rich Dad may have been a man named Richard Kimmy, who was a wealthy hotel investor in Hawaii. What is known is that Rich Dad, Poor Dad has sold more than 32 million copies in 40 languages across 40 countries since it was published. I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to own your own copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The book is truly fascinating. If you choose to use my affiliate links, I will be compensated, but at no extra cost to you. What makes the book so good is that it's able to break down the steps to becoming rich into basic ideas anyone can understand and apply. It offers the building blocks of wealth creation that can be used regardless of age, creed, or other ideas that separate people. Today, I'd like to share with you the wisdom of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Principle number 1, always think in terms of opportunities. Rich Dad forbade his children and Kiyosaki from using terms like, "I can't afford it." He told them it was lazy thinking and it shuts the mind down for possibilities. Instead, he redirected them to think in terms of, "How can I afford it?" The question enables one to use his or her imagination. This in turn forces the brain to search for answers. Kiyosaki learns that poor and middle class people don't think in terms of opportunities. They're content to shut their brain down, and so they remain in the same financial state that they're in. Principle number 2, fear and self-doubt are your greatest barriers to success. One of the key differences between the rich and the poor is how they manage fear. For instance, Poor Dad is generally fearful of his son's entrepreneurial spirit. He encourages doing well in school and getting a stable job with a big company in order to be financially secure. Poor Dad himself works for the state of Hawaii as a professor. He prefers the stability of a guaranteed paycheck. Rich Dad says, often in the real world, it's not the smart who get ahead, but the bold. Kiyosaki discovers in the book that Rich Dad is known for his boldness as a businessman throughout their community. Rich Dad dropped out of school at the age of 13 in order to start his own businesses. There was no guarantee in this, and Rich Dad could have wound up on the street. It was his business intelligence and his can-do attitude, and not the fact that he dropped out of school, that made him rich. In fact, at the beginning of the book, Rich Dad and Poor Dad made about the same amount of money and shared an accountant. Principle number 3, the rich buy assets, not liabilities. Another key difference between the rich and everyone else is how the rich use their money. The key to becoming wealthy is to use your income to buy assets. Those assets will create more income, which you can use to buy more assets. The rich understand this concept, the poor and the middle class do not. Kiyosaki notes, the rich buy assets, the poor only have expenses, the middle class buy liabilities that they think are assets. The middle class don't seem to understand what an asset is. Kiyosaki makes it very simple. An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. Examples of assets can be stocks, bonds, or investment properties. Each of those will cost the investor a certain amount of money up front, but will also generate a financial return at a regular interval. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. Liabilities lose value over time. A common example is a car. According to Carfax, most new cars lose 20% of their value within the first year of ownership. Contrary to popular belief, a house, as in the home that you live in, is a liability and not an asset. Principle number 4, financial literacy can only be learned through experience. Again, Rich Dad and Poor Dad differ in this principle. Poor Dad advocates getting good grades as the only way to get a good job with a big company and getting excellent benefits. Rich Dad makes it clear that the best education you can get is to learn how to make your money work for you. Today we call that financial literacy. Kiyosaki adds that in order to be financially literate, you have to master accounting, investing, markets, and tax law. Principle number 5, learn to sell. There's a scene in the book where Kiyosaki is being interviewed by a reporter who has a master's degree in English. She confides in him that she would like to be a best-selling author like he is. His advice to her is to enroll in the sales training course. Insulted by this advice, the reporter storms off. Sales is a crucial life skill. A person is selling in almost every aspect of their life. You're selling your professional skills when you go for a job interview. You're selling your potential as a mate when you go on a date. You're selling your ideas when you try to persuade someone. Selling is an essential skill if you want to be successful in any aspect of life, including wealth creation. The wisdom of Rich Dad, Poor Dad is enduring. By utilizing the book's 5 key principles, anyone can become rich. Always remember to think in terms of opportunities. Cast aside fear and self-doubt. Buy assets and not liabilities. Develop financial literacy and learn to sell. If you can manage these 5 simple principles, you too will become wealthy. Well, that's my video on the wisdom of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I appreciate you watching. Let me know any questions, comments, or topic suggestions you might have on financial literacy in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, or even if you've been watching for a while, thanks for joining us. I'd like to see where our viewers are from. Comment your city, state, and country down in the comments section. Speaking of comments, I'd like to take time to feature a comment from the last video. Today's featured comment comes from Vandal Savage. Thank you, Vandal, for commenting. I'd like to encourage the rest of you to comment on videos for a chance to be featured. I read and reply to every comment I get. Make sure you like the video for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when I come out with new content. And be sure to share the video with a friend. Check the links in the description for offer information. Lastly, if you want to get started investing in the stock market and are looking for free stock, Robinhood is holding a promotion in the description. Use the link to start your Robinhood account and to claim your free stock share. Free stock shares value up to $150. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.